Yeah, you think you just saw me? I'm back again. I got more people. We've got so much great content. I'm glad you could stick around and watch a little bit of it, but don't worry. All the episodes are going to be released every Tuesday and Thursday. So just go to bizbookpublishinghub.com. You can watch them on my live stream and you can watch them on my YouTube, but you can listen to them on my audio podcast. Here we go. Let's jump right in. Ever dream about becoming an author and selling 1 million books? Well, here's a reality check. Most books sell fewer than 100 copies in their first year, and the average is under 200 books annually. Over a book's lifetime, it will most likely sell fewer than 1,000 copies. And in the publishing world, selling more than 5,000 copies is considered a success. But here's the thing. Those numbers, they don't really matter. If you're writing a book to grow your business, you don't need to sell 1 million copies to generate millions in sales. What you need is a well-crafted book that speaks to a specific audience and solves a particular problem. And once your book is in their hands, you need a plan to keep them engaged and ready for your next offer. And that's where I come in. I help entrepreneurs build book launch teams that drive 50 plus Amazon reviews and create a steady flow of leads. I help you gather a launch team made up of your ideal prospects and referral partners, exactly the people you want to be connecting with. Plus, I can design and host virtual book launch parties that guide your audience straight to your next offer. Whether you're just getting started writing a book, you're about to publish, or you have a book you're trying to market in new ways, I invite you to schedule a complimentary 30-minute book launch strategy brainstorming session. To get started, complete the form at robbiesamuels.com/book launch support. Before we dive into today's panel, here is a quick word from our sponsor. Today's panel will dive into what it's like to be a business author, both the highs and lows of publishing a business book. With me today, Brendan McAdams wrote Sales Craft, Proven Tips, Tactics, and Ideas to Elevate Your Sales, which provides actionable strategies and techniques designed to enhance sales performance and help professionals achieve greater success in their sales endeavors. Geoffrey Klein wrote The Content Beast, a perfect guide for anyone who wants to learn how to use story-driven content for effective content marketing. And Sarah Moody, who wrote Rock Your Brain, Rock Your Life. Do you want to effing love your life? If so, I got you, which offers practical strategies and insights for optimizing mental well-being and harnessing the power of your mind to create a fulfilling, purpose-driven life. Please join me in welcoming Brendan, Geoffrey, and Sarah. Brendan, I'm kicking this first question over to you. Welcome, and share a little bit for us. Who's the ideal reader for the books that you're writing?
It's primarily, my background has been B2B sales and particularly enterprise sales. And so this is written from the perspective of a salesperson that focuses on large accounts. So it's really designed for people that are selling into large corporations and enterprises, and where the sale is relatively complex and complicated, and lots of different decision makers and people involved. And so that's really, it's kind of a toolkit of ideas and simple suggestions for that crowd.
Awesome. We have another book in this Kindle cross promotion campaign that you just joined. He was just on doing time management within the world of sales. So I will make sure the two of you connect. I love when these kinds of overlaps happen just spontaneously. So that's really fun. Geoffrey, The Content Beast, super fun name. I feel like I have a visceral reaction hearing it. Tell us a little bit about who you wrote that book for.
Well, as a speaker, often in my presentations on content marketing, I'd say every business needs to feed the beast, the content beast. And that was the origin of the title. And it's really for two distinct groups. One is for the business owner who doesn't have anyone in their marketing department who's responsible for content, and they're busy running on their business. And they're like, I know I need to do some content stuff, but I'm not sure how to do that. And then the second group of people who that is their job. Their job is to manage content, and they need some help. And so for both groups, the idea is you're trying to connect with a target audience to build trust and loyalty so you can sell more of your products and services. And this is kind of a playbook for how to help do that.
Brilliant. Sarah, I'm coming over to you. I feel like there was someone on the last panel I need to introduce you to. She's wrote about being a financial rock star. I feel like you two are attracting a certain kind of person to you. Who is that person that you want to have knocking on your door?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I can totally relate to Brendan just being in enterprise sales, enterprise B2B sales. I've been in the tech industry for 30 years. So I get the whole world of enterprise B2B sales and how challenging that is. And my book is for senior high achieving leaders in tech who are struggling with stagnation or burnout. There's an absolute epidemic out there around that. And so Rock Your Brain, Rock Your Life just provides a holistic approach to relationship-driven success and personal fulfillment. Leaders who want to rock their life. That's it. Yeah.
And is this your first book?
It is my first book.
And when did it come out?
It came out a couple years ago. I wrote it in COVID, and I took 90 days to write it.
Wow. Okay. I want to go back to that time period.
Yeah.
Because now you know more about the process of being an author and having a book. But when you first got started, I don't know how many authors you knew. I don't know how much you thought about it relating to a business or what metrics to track. What was important to you back then? What did you think? Okay, if just this happens, the book will be a success.
Yeah. I learned how to get out of my own way and stop struggling with stagnation or burnout. And I wanted women in tech to get out of their own way and become the versions of themselves that they had been dreaming about around their career, around their love life, and having a fabulous life. That to me was success, was just sharing these proven cognitive tools that had completely changed my life in COVID. And fortunately, I've helped hundreds of women do that. And that was, being of service. That was my success metric at the highest level. Now, yes, number of copies sold, review and ratings. I only have 5-star ratings, and just the sentiment of the reviews was also really important to me as well.
Yeah. Brendan, you're about to launch the second book, and I imagine what you know about it, that process has changed. Going back to your first book, what might you say about your early understanding of what metrics to track? Like what would be a success metric back then that has changed to what you think about today?
It's a good question. I've had some time to think about that. I published in 2019, and I did it as it was sort of a bucket list idea. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I've been collecting a lot of anecdotes and stories and kind of tips and techniques and little practices. And so what I sort of wrote it without a set of specific metrics at the time. I did launch it in a way that was very well defined. So on Amazon, it got some early traction and was one of the top sellers early on. But beyond that, I didn't have a lot of planning go into it. I had a bunch of word of mouth, and I shared it with people that I knew in social media, LinkedIn in particular, and Twitter. But I was doing more with Twitter at the time. But I didn't have a strong, sophisticated marketing strategy at the time.
I think that is very real and honest, because that's true for most people who are getting started writing a book, unless they are really in an author community where people can kind of point these things out, or they have a particular writing coach, or they hire a particular agent, right? Somebody has to guide them, because from the outside perspective, I mean, the whole goal when you're first writing a book is to publish it. Like that's
exactly
that's
right.
what you think of as like, that's it. But I was getting ready for the panel going tomorrow, and the note at the top says, people think of having the marathon of writing a book, but marathon runners get to rest when they're done. It's really more like an Ironman triathlon, right? There's like all these stages that you have to go through, the endurance of it. Geoffrey, let me come over to you. This is your first book. One question I have for you, and we can hear the typing, just so you know. It's being picked up by
taking notes.
Yeah, it's being picked up by the microphone. So that's why I was muting you. I can imagine you're like, everything is so good here. I want to know, Geoffrey, actually, how you came to write a book that has no subtitle in a world where subtitles have gotten longer and longer and longer.
It has a subtitle. What do you mean?
On Amazon, it just says Content Beast.
Oh, Oh, I guess it's on the
Is there
book
more
cover.
to it in the cover?
There is. Great
Ah,
story driven. So maybe I
got
should
it.
update that.
Maybe it's just like usually I go to an Amazon page and there's sometimes it's wrapped to the third line. And it's gotten longer and
Yeah,
longer. I'm guilty of
I
it
get.
too.
My feeling is the content piece speaks for itself, and so
There
I
you go.
didn't know.
I was like, wow, it definitely had like Madonna vibes. Like
Yeah,
just one
there's
name's all you need. Jeffrey,
um,
you and I met through the National Speakers Association, and so I think you probably got messages like I did about the importance of writing a book if you're going to be a professional speaker. It was like drilled into my head. I don't know if anyone said it directly to me so much as like I was swimming in that idea. Website, book, but having a book that actually feeds your business is a totally different plan than just publishing. When you got started writing this book, I know eventually you and I had a conversation, but before all that, what did you originally think was going to be important for this book? Like, how did you initially approach it? And then how did that evolve over time?
So I like to write. So I do. I've been writing my whole life, and I thought I'd write the Great American Novella because it would never be long enough to be a novel. And then when I started thinking about speaking, and yeah, I heard anecdotes from people who said they were being considered for a speaking gig, and the person said, "Where can we get your book?" And the person was like, "I don't have a book." And so there was a lot of those stories of like, oh, speaker author is like the default that you have to have. So that was definitely the catalyst for, as you said, the goal was to write a book. Like the rest of it was kind of, but when I started getting it, I was like, okay, I was pretty much thinking about, I wanted to write a book that would actually be read. And I also was obsessed for a while that it has to be 30,000 words. Like there was this word count crisis I was having daily because I was like, I would have been over. And I went through a book coaching program with David Newman that was amazing. And he relieved me of that stress of word count. And I think my book ended up being roughly around. But what he said is you want to write a book that is easy to write, easy to read, easy to promote, easy to buy in bulk. And I always liked his idea of you want a book that an executive can read on a plane ride from New York to Chicago or something along those lines. And so that was part of what was in my head when I started really focusing on the writing. And the other part is my belief is that if you want to communicate, the best way to do that is by telling a story. So how do I write a book that's kind of talking about content and tell stories that relate to what I'm trying to convey? Because if I didn't have stories in it, then I'm kind of being a hypocrite. And that was kind of something. And the goal is write a book that you're happy for people to read. I think that was a lot of the impetus to get it going.
Geoffrey, when you said that piece about how you have to find a way to write a book about storytelling that has stories, or else you'd be a hypocrite. There was a time when I was doing a lot of trainings about how to use Zoom effectively to create engagement, but I was doing it as a training, like there was a lot of like, and then do this. But I had to make it interesting and engaging. I definitely feel that tension of like, do the thing. Oh, I have to do the thing too. Oh, okay. Yeah, I have to figure out how to do the thing. I really appreciate, your launch has been really fantastic to watch, Geoffrey. Brendan, you're about to come up with a new book. I know we were just talking about it's like as we speak, it's days from being available.
Yeah,
so
right.
How have you approached this launch different from your first time around? Is there any lessons learned that you're applying to this second baby of yours?
Well, I'm doing your program for one. So I'm culling, or I'm kind of aggregating a bunch of early readers to get feedback, and also with the idea that they might provide a review when it does release. I'm doing some things around social media to make people more aware of it as it gets ready. For me, a lot of my work is consulting and coaching with early stage startups and companies that are looking to enter new markets, B2B markets. And so for me, it's as much a tool as a sales guide. It's also kind of an addition to some of the training that I do, and so it actually works as a reference guide as much. for me and marketing material. I think that's for a lot of business people that don't aspire to get onto the New York Times bestseller list with a business book. What they really want it for is its credibility, it's a sense of accomplishment, and those sorts of things. So I might not have the most aggressive marketing plan, because for me, it's much more of a something I give as a kind of catalyst for further conversation. Some of my customers are people I would give the book to, and the idea would be they would look at it, read it, or scan it, and go, and then hand it to someone else. You should hire this guy, or you should. And so for me, the value of the book is not in, to your opening lines, it's not in the book sales per se. It's in the add-on credibility and the kind of the content that Geoffrey does. It's content for me.
I think the term is sales enablement tool. Like, it is helping you push that conversation forward. They pass it along.
Yeah.
It sets you up as the authority, experts.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's brilliant. We're going to get to reviews in a moment, because I think reviews are social proof. That's part of that whole equation, and sometimes get skipped. But I have a question for Sarah. Sarah, you do have a subtitle, and you've got an F-bomb in your subtitle with a little bit of an asterisk. I had to actually write it out phonetically so I would not accidentally just say it. So I think Rock Your Brain, Rock Your Life, plus that subtitle, that tells me you've got a certain avatar in your mind, right? Certain people are going to be repelled, some people are going to be drawn. One, I like that, because I think if you're too middle of the road, you're for nobody.
Yeah.
Has it worked for you?
100%. My book is similar to what Brenda was just saying. It's top of the funnel. It's awareness. It's sharing the way that I think. It's sharing it's a bunch of amazing free content. And the people who come to me for either A, my coaching business, or B, for when I work with the C-suite, helping them drive revenue, are provocative leaders who have a really clear point of view, who have confidence. They're not afraid about what they think. They're not that worried about what others think, or they come to me wanting to be more like that. So I am that way. And so those types of people are drawn to me, either A, because they're already like that, or B, that they want to be that way. Yeah.
Did you get pushback from anyone along the way who thought they knew better than you about who your ideal market was and whether or not they'd receive it well?
No, I did not.
Because people just knew you and knew it would work. Awesome.
I thankfully exude a lot of confidence, and thankfully I'm really good at what I do, like total brag. So no. And here's what I believe. What do I desire? Like, what feels right to me? That's what's most important, right? And the people who love me will follow me. Yeah. Yeah.
I do know somebody that had an opportunity where they could have had their book on the Times Square, like they put. But they couldn't because of a word on their cover. Really? Yeah. So I
actually want to get onto the New York Times billboard. So maybe I need to adjust my subtitle.
So hers, it was in the title, not the subtitle. So it was a little harder. But and she also can't do ads. So it's just things to be aware of. Like there are pros, like meaning the people who are attracted to you are like, oh, that's clearly the person for me. Yeah. And then there are just traditional marketing that might be a little out of your reach because it's traditional. So it may not be the way you want to market anyway. That's just the thing to know. Yeah. Geoffrey, we're going to get to reviews. This is like my favorite part of this. And I know everyone else is like, oh, I'll just go to the dentist now. See you later. But Geoffrey, you did it. I'm so proud of you. Okay. So first I want to mention to everyone that we have ratings and we have reviews. So ratings are when people can leave stars, 1 to 5 stars. They don't have to buy the book. They don't have to write anything. People could come and just leave a bunch of stars. It's honestly not that meaningful. I have seen people who have like 232 ratings and 10 reviews, but they're walking around telling people they have over 200 reviews. I'm like, no, you don't. It's not hard to get 200 people to hit 5 stars. But Geoffrey, you clearly had a plan because you have 94 total ratings and 57 reviews. and you do have reviews that came in kind of recently. Some of them from the last folks who were part of the launch that we just did, the Kindle cross promotion campaign in November. But you've got other reviews from people I don't know from this summer. So I like that the reviews are continuously coming in. How did you approach your launch plan? Where did the reviews kind of come in? It's hard to get even 20 people to write a review. How did you get more than 50 to do it?
Methodically. So I will say that it was something that was part of the plan and not my plan. Speaking to people about it, including Robbie, was like, get on this. So I had, I'm pretty well connected to people. And so now it's like, okay, I help people out a lot. Maybe they'll help me. And so I had a spreadsheet of various people in my network. And then I created a, cut and paste request. I had a cheat sheet for how to write the review. I had sample reviews. I had a kind of what I would think is a fairly robust package for helping people get reviews and then tracking them. And so I asked people to write reviews before the book launched. And I said, if you can send it to me so I can track it. So by asking them to actually send me the review, I then had them ready to go and then cut and paste them into the letter. Okay, the book's launching on this date. Can you, post it? Here it is for you, because you probably still don't have it. So it's really about, I think, persistence, because, not everyone I asked obviously did it, but I asked enough people that enough of them did it that it made that impact, and following up. And people say, oh yeah, I'll do it. And I'm like, okay, when? And so like any other request that's of importance, you might have to ask a couple times, and then help them along the way. And everyone was, most people were, when I met, if they didn't say yes, I would, that's where it kind of ended.
Right.
And there were a couple of people like, I just don't have the time or this or that. But for the most part, I'm asking my network, I'm not asking strangers. Now, what I do find great is there are people who've written reviews who I don't know. And that's kind of cool, because I'm like, oh my God, someone will tell you that. And then some I don't know well. But I still ask. And I think that's the thing, in the habit of someone's like, oh, I saw your book or I read your book. I'm like, I have with my book, I have a website to go and get extra bonus materials. And so I get a request when those come in, they fill out a form. I then send them an email with the bonus materials and say, hey, if you like the book, it would really mean a lot to me if you'd write a review. Now, I don't know how many I've gotten from there, but if you don't ask, they definitely won't write it. And so I think there's an intentionality and a persistence that enabled me to be successful.
I'm going to pull from this for you, Geoffrey. Polite persistence is what I call that follow-up. I also think it's important for people to consciously opt in to making the review happen for you. That if they haven't really said yes, and you keep following up with them, now you're just spamming them. But if they say, yeah, I'll do that for you, Geoffrey, they've set an intention, and our job as authors is to make it as easy as possible for them to follow through with that intention, because when they do, they'll feel great, we'll feel great. Geoffrey, I love this idea of giving people kind of like a package of cheat sheet and all this. I like to give people at least, some prompts to help write a review. I like the idea of giving people a sample. You must have given them an advanced reader copy, because of course the book didn't exist yet on Amazon. So you share a PDF version of the book. They write the review. You collect the review. This is my process, right? We talked about this. And then when the book's out, they then go and so I have a separation between the publication date is not the same day as the launch date. And this is a thing that a lot of publishers talk about. Your publication date is your release date. Everything has to happen on this date. No, it doesn't. And some of it's like, oh, but you're not going to hit number one. You've got to concentrate sales. No, you don't. If you get a dozen sales a day for multiple days in a row in most categories, you'll do fine, unless it's like how to win friends and influence other, it's like, then you're not going to hit number one. Okay, fine. But otherwise you probably can. But it's a whole process. The one thing I would do to tweak your process, if you do this again, I heard a lot of manually cutting and pasting involved. And I'll just tell everyone, I use a tool called YAM, Yet Another Malmerge, YAMM.com, to help manage the hyper personalization at scale. It's so cool. So thank you, Geoffrey. Great job. I'm curious for Brandon. I mean, you went through this process before. You got 13 ratings, 10 reviews. It wasn't a big part. Amazon wasn't a big focus for you, but you've heard my pitch. You understand how these are social proof. How are you approaching it a little differently? The review piece.
Well, now I'm going to adopt kind of a similar approach to what Geoffrey kind of outlined. I'm reaching out to people in my network, past customers, for example, all my previous coaching clients, and I ran an accelerator and I've run a bunch of training programs. So each of those people will get contacted, and in a lot of cases I've already gotten references from them anyway, so this is not a big deal. This is not a big lift for me, so I'm kind of confident that'll be a way to get some real traction. And then from the social media side, I'll do some things there and probably do some promos. And again, like Geoffrey, I'm gonna have some additional materials that people can access. And I will probably acknowledge some of the people early on in the acknowledgement section of the book, because I have the ability to do that beforehand, so that early readers might even get mentioned. I guess one question I have is, do they have to buy the book though in order to leave a
they don't
review?
have to buy the book, but we do encourage them to buy the book in order to leave a verified review, which is why I guide people to lower their Kindle book price to 99 cents. They get the advanced reader copy, and then they're told to buy the Kindle book for 99 cents. And they're told the importance of why. It's hard to happen for a book, but I do have a friend who has a product, and he finally got a chance to sell it through Amazon, and he asked his customers to then leave a review, and he hit the threshold of too many non-verified reviews, and he got told he could no longer accept reviews that were not verified. So I think it's a pretty high threshold, but it would be problematic. Geoffrey, what do you want to add to this?
Yeah, and I didn't include the finer details, but I did exactly what Robbie said, which is, so that's why I asked them to write the review ahead of time, and then said, I'll let you know when you can go. And part of the steps I asked them to do was buy the book for 99 cents. In some cases, I said, wait a day, and then I'll email you to then post the review. So it wasn't like buy, post, because I don't, there's some, they get less verified if it's immediately at the same time. But I think a lot of my reviews were verified because of that process. I had my Kindle book at 99 cents. And so for $1, people could go and buy the book and do the review. That's the same process. And within a couple of days, I can't remember how long it took, your Kindle reviews and your book reviews are amalgamated. So if you go on my paperback, they have the same reviews. You can tell the difference.
Well, and if I could just add one thing, the reason I signed up for this program, this particular program, is, and I'm sure you know this, but it also sort of creates a deadline, right? You got to get something done by a certain date, and so this is basically put me on a bomb run to get it done by the end of the month, right? So it's just sort of like, it's like hiring a personal trainer, right? Who yells at you until you do your 25 push-ups or whatever. It's a little bit of that too. So
I really appreciate, Brandon. I actually have 3 authors that are currently working with me to get their launch team set up with the advanced reader copy in October. 2 of them have a Kindle book being published November 4th, one November 11th. And they're aiming to get a minimum of 20 reviews by November 27th, because it's the day before U.S. Thanksgiving. Then the day after U.S. Thanksgiving is the Black Friday event, where we're going to cross promote. Their reviews will keep trickling in, but we'll be boosting sales during that time. And then they're actually having their launch party in January because of the holidays. And so they're using the launch party in January to lead into a new offer or pilot that's happening in the Q1. Yeah. So it's really cool. I've had people do this accidentally now, but now this is the first time where people were like, wait, when is it? Okay, could I pull that off? Yes. Oh, okay. Well, I better get on my ducks in a row.
and at the risk of being, being a little too transparent, when I do this and reach out to a lot of these people that are past customers or current customers, and say, hey, they got this new book coming out, it's also sort of a subliminal reminder that, hey, you know what, we should hire him again. And so the book for me, is as much as Sarah mentioned. It's a marketing tool, and so I suspect that it will also benefit in terms of the ROI will be pretty high at once, just from the review requests.
I'm going to come to you in a second, Sarah, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. But I 100% agree. And the thing I want to really note is how thoughtful you're being, Brandon, about asking your likely prospects, former clients, and referral partners to participate. I have had people reach out to me to do a relaunch, and I'm confused because they have 32 reviews. Again, anything over 20 means they made real effort. But they're like, well, the book's not helping me sell. And I'm like, okay, well, you got 30 people here. Like, tell me who these 30 people are. I'm thinking they must be some prospects or referral partners. And then one woman would just lean forward very excitedly to tell me how her friends and family like really came through for her. And I'm like, face palm, like, your friends and family don't have budgets. They don't have the need for this book. Like, they don't refer anybody. So with all that in mind, Sarah, let me bring you into the conversation. Reviews are hard, no matter what. But I'm curious, Sarah, other than reviews,
Yes.
this is your first book.
Yeah.
Some people find writing really challenging. Some love it. Some think the promotions are really awful. Some love it. How did you know where you needed to hire help? What parts were yours?
Yeah.
What did you have to learn along the way?
Yeah.
People listening are thinking about doing what you did.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what would you share?
Yeah. I'm gonna share 3 things actually. If you're thinking about writing a book, these are the 3 things that I had top of mind every single day. Number 1, the world needs what I had to share. I've helped hundreds of women with my coaching business, which, the book is like creating awareness for what I teach. So the world needs what you have to share. So, and there's no one with my message or your message. So honor your desire and don't listen to your brain's stories that you're not smart enough, you've never written a book, like this is too hard. All of those are stories and lies. Number 2, I had to tell myself it's not going to take 5 years. I wrote it in 90 days. And a part of my brain was like, I should wait till I'm older and I'm retired and all the things. No, write a book now. And you can write it in 90 days. I decided to self-publish. I probably, if I'm going to write another book, I would probably hire someone like you who is an expert in this, because I kind of stumbled along the way, to be honest, and figured it out. And I mean, I didn't have a ghostwriter. I had someone on my team that helped me edit, but I wrote it all. And it was all from, what did I do to rock my life, to go from burnout and stagnation to rocking my life? And here's the playbook for you. And probably the third thing that I would say is, choose a business-centric topic, like leverage your expertise. Like, I'm in tech, I know burnout, I know stagnation, I know how I got the big unlock. So pick a topic that aligns with your core business, your skills, your unique approach, and just write, and don't overthink it. And solve a problem would be another one that I would say as well. Solve a really clear problem. For me, my problem was stop listening to your mind, because most of the stories in your mind, 99% of them are lies and limiting beliefs, and will keep you stuck in burnout. And that was pretty much it, actually, in terms of my approach and what I would advise anyone else who's going to write a book. Yeah.
I appreciate the kind of get yourself out of the way. And let your amazing content do the talking. Like, let your content connect with people who have a problem that they know they're having, they're willing to admit, provide a solution that they understand and can follow through on, invite them to participate so they can learn more about you and get help with the things that they don't yet know they have a problem doing. And then it works, right? It's like you have to match all these pieces up. I used to think that for book launch strategy, I wanted to talk to people who were at the end of the writing process with the manuscript heading to the editor. And I have learned that if someone just says, I'm thinking about writing a book, I'm like, meet with me. Let's do this now. Let's have this conversation right now. I am not a writing coach. I'm not a developmental editor, but I'm a strategist. I can get them on the right path so they don't spend a year and a half kind of writing a book that has no market. So I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I said +1 on that. Hire
Yeah.
you when you're thinking about it. Yes.
Yeah, just to kind of have that mindset piece. I'm curious, Sarah, what has been your most effective marketing strategy for selling lots of books all at once? I mean, individual sales are, I only focus on that during the launch where I'm trying to get those reviews coming in. But after that, it's really about bulk sales or cross promotion sales or collaboration sales. So what's led to some book sales for you?
Speaking engagements. I do a lot of speaking engagements and mostly workshops. I love workshops. So I'll do workshops with 8, 10, 12, 20 people. Like this week at my house, I'm having 12 people over and I'm hosting a workshop. So that is my biggest strategy, is speaking engagements and workshops.
I love it.
And I sometimes I give, I give a couple away, but for the most part, I sell them. Yeah.
That's awesome. Brendan, what has been your strategy for boosting book sales?
I've done some bulk sales with for speaking engagements and some consulting groups, that some consulting projects that I've done. Beyond that, I mention it from time to time in social media posts and other things. I make a few sales every month. It really hasn't been the driver for me. It's more of a sense of accomplishment, and it's the collateral. It's the kind of the leave behind. It's the reference material that I use in conjunction with my consulting and my training. There's something we said for being able to have someone ask about a problem and then say, "Hey, I covered that in this chapter. Here's the example. Here's the story." So it's been so clearly I've dealt with that kind of a situation before. So I just I'll tell them about it in a that's mentioned in a book, or I'll send them that chapter or what have you.
Yeah, I find myself doing that all the time. Geoffrey, I know speaking is a big part of your life. Other than speaking, which is a great way to kind of do bulk sales, has there been anything that has really helped you kind of get the word out? And let's make sure you unmute before you join us. There you go.
Well, I'm going to share two things. One, I actually have had Amazon ads running at a low rate from the beginning, and it drips in every month sales. So I don't know that I'm making any money on it, but it's keeping it. It's part of the marketing of just having the book out there.
Yeah.
And the other way that I'm using the book that I think in terms of speaking is if I speak to an event planner and they've just booked their speaker, or they'll email me saying, "Oh, we'd love to talk to you." It's a great opportunity to say, "In the meantime, how would you feel? Would you want? I wanted to offer to send you my book," and everyone's like, "Oh, yes," and so you can package it however you. And I found that's a really way of extending and the relationship with someone by sending them, in the mail, an actual book that they get. Oh my God! So I think there's still something to that physicality of a physical book. But for me, again, sales is not my motivation, but I think it's a part of the whole machine of having things just ticking along and making sure. And I don't check my sales that often. I check them like, "Oh, I didn't realize I had, more sold than I thought." And so that's partly the ads and partly just, me sharing it with people. And
I think what I'm getting from all of you, and I want to just sort of say it succinctly for those who are listening, if you get your book in front of the ideal audience and you have a very clear offer to follow up with them around it, and you have good systems for checking with people, that's the goal, not making $20. Whether you discount it or give it away, the only reason you need those verified reviews initially is to have social proof on the book's page. So when I recommend Sarah to somebody else and they're like, "Wait, who's Sarah?" and they go and they look and Sarah's got reviews, it's just like, okay, this is not a random book written by AI and just total crap, right? Like, we want to make sure that it's valid and validated in some way. And so I think having reviews matter in that way. But then the bulk sales are often a way to make money when there's not a speaking budget. Sometimes there's a budget for books, or there's a way to enhance your consulting package or something like that. So it's all these doors open when you don't realize it, because now when you have a book, you're like, oh wait, I can do this other thing. I'd actually like to go back to you, Brendan, about how, because you're in B2B sales, you're clearly thinking about how this book's going to fit in. You mentioned it earlier, but tell us again, like, let's say someone's reading your book and they're like, ooh, this is good. What's the path people go from reading the book to discovering your ecosystem?
Well, it's mentioned in the back of the book. This is how you work with me. You know, the standard kind of link, and then there's the and then there, as Geoffrey mentioned, there'll be additional materials that, you know, templates and other things, sales tools that they can access for free, and then that gets them into, you know, a newsletter and, you know, and some other content from time to time. So it's just for me a way to stay in front of people very unobtrusively, and, you know, in a kind of value added way. That those are the big things for me. One of the things I'm going to do, there's a book that, as you mentioned, the next book's coming out at the end of this month, or and then I'm going to do another one in a series. So I'm kind of breaking down different parts of the sales process and different kind of perspectives of the sales profession from a B2B standpoint, an early stage startup. That's where I do a lot of work with early stage founders who have a good idea but have trepidation around selling and don't want to sell. They wait until the last minute. And so I try and alleviate some of that stress and kind of get them to think differently about it. And so these books are kind of, the idea behind them is they're relatively easy to absorb, and then they capture, and they kind of address some very fundamental things, but they're basically hopefully a catalyst to go, oh, I should contact him about doing more on this, or this is something I'm going to hand off to, if an investor, you know, a venture capitalist or a private equity person has the book, they're going to look at it and go, oh, I need this guy to work on this investment with this group.
So Brendan, one thing I heard you say that I want to pull out is you're having a series of smaller books.
Yes.
And I love this because I think Geoffrey sort of alluded to this idea of it being a quicker read. If you were to write a 70 or 80,000 word book, it would be like, ooh, you know, like no one would want to read this huge book. But if you can break it down, it stands alone, but they hang together, and you can the best way to sell book one, I was told, was to sell book 2 and 3. You sell more book 1 when the third. And by the way, this happened to me. I found what's fascinating with the Kindle cross promotion campaign. I have 3 books right now, working on the 4th, was to see, I sold like almost 250 books. It was curious to see which one sold the most, and that some books, I actually saw a jump in paperback sales. So it's a Kindle promotion, but there are people who get there and kind of go, oh, wait, I actually want to have that physical version of that book. So being part of even these kinds of collaborations, cross promotions, it's just visibility. It's getting your book in front of the different audiences. Sarah, I'm going to come back to you. I want to know your biggest success story because you were an author. Like, because I was an author, this whole amazing thing was suddenly an opportunity in front of me. Anything come to mind? Oh, let me unmute you. I apologize. Oh, you got it. Great.
Yeah, this amazing opportunity at Google came to me where I got to work with a whole team of executives and do workshops with them to help them unlock all their limiting beliefs and just really feel more creative and more powerful and more aware of their potential as executives at Google. And I did it actually on Zoom, speaking about you and your expertise in creating really interactive Zoom experiences. I did it with a bunch of executives in Europe and Asia and in the US. And it was incredibly, I mean, I got a ton of reviews about how profound it was. So that was awesome. Yeah.
I love that for you, and having that social proof from having the brand affiliation because they chose you. So that's awesome. Yeah. But they also they had an easier decision to choose you because you had a book. So like, it's a funny thing where like I got this advice from Dory Clark, who's a really well-known author and business coach. And she teaches at business schools. She does a lot of things, but she says like people are busy, decision makers are busy. So like if you can help them validate that you know what you're talking about because you've got the book and a TEDx and like they're like great, like sure, go ahead and hire that person. I want to know in a moment. I'm going to go Brendan first here about your best advice that you would give someone who's helping them write a book to grow their business. Sarah shared a few ideas earlier, so I'm going to go to Brendan and then Geoffrey. But first, we're going to hear a quick word from our sponsor. All right, Brendan, you've shared a lot of valuable tips so far, but either it's something you want to repeat or something new you want to share. They're listening, they're thinking about writing a book, they're using the book to help them grow a business. What's your best advice?
There are two things. One is work with somebody in some kind of a coaching capacity. Like I had a good kind of advocate for me that kind of kept me on track in some cases and had a chance to critique. And so that was incredibly helpful for me. Is to now there's three. The second is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It's much more important to get it out there than it is for it to be perfect. It's really good for it should be written crisply. The punctuation should be good. You shouldn't have typos and things like that. It should be formatted, but it's really good to get something out there. And a lot of people just never get to the point where they hit send or, do whatever you have to do with Kindle. And, so those two things. And the other thing for me is a little bit, I think, a tip, and as much a tip as a question in this kind of hyper media, attention deficit syndrome sort of a lifestyle that we tend to live in now. I really struggle with the idea of these long books and there's something about a book that's 100, 120 pages, 150 that's formatted in such a way that it's easy to read and absorb, is much more likely to get used and consumed, and maybe even more than once than a book that if you're compelled to try and write 250 pages or 300 pages, I think that's both an obstacle that's too big that kind of intimidates a lot of people a lot from even starting. And I think it also makes it very resistant for anyone to read the book. So I'm really gravitating towards shorter, more concise prose and formatting and kind of more digestible, book formats. That's what I would recommend.
I think it's really smart. And I wanted to actually share, I have 3 books. The first book had 32,000 words. The second 27,000 words. And I think to answer, Geoffrey sort of brought this up earlier, you should only write a book that's as long as needed to tell the story and
Right.
Nothing more than that. But what I did do is I formatted them as 5x8s instead of 6x9, because if they were 6x9, they would be more like a workbook. The spine wouldn't be very wide, and you want to be able to put your name and your publishing icon and all that. But my last book was more of a manual, so it's 64,000 words. There's 100 images. It's more of a reference. It's not meant to be cover to cover read. It's a reference book. So in which case 6x9 was right, because I needed it to be something that people could easily flip through. But it's just interesting because I have seen people talking about the smaller books. I work with some clients who are working specifically with writing coaches who are guiding them to do exactly what you just said, Brendan, but are not suggesting the 5x8 format. And so when they get it, they're not able to put their, all their information on the spine. And I'm like, what does it look like? A book? Like it looks like a workbook. So
I think mine's is 5.5 by 8.5 a size too.
It might be. I mean, there's a few different options. 5x8, it's 5.08 by 7.81 is the smallest size on Amazon. Why do I still have that? 5.06 by 781. Why do I know that? Anyway, it's just these are things to pay attention to.
Mine's 5.5 by 8.5. But you're right. That's what I'm doing next time. I'll do 5x8.
Yeah, you just because you wanted to have that book feel, even if it's less content. But I also know people who write these books that are like at least 6x9 and 300 pages. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot, you know? And that could easily have been 2 books, maybe less. Sarah, what do you want to say about your book?
Really quick thing to say. I think I have more than one review that says this was a quick and easy read. My book, Rock Your Way, it's 100 pages.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're looking for.
And a nice color, by the way.
Geoffrey, join the conversation and share with us your best advice for someone.
Just to go on the size and title, Jay Baer wrote a book that's a little book about speed. It's hilarious and it's effective. And so I keep thinking I'm going to write a little tiny book. The 2 pieces of advice I would give, one is not going to come as a stranger. I have a concept in my book called the 11th commandment, which is to know thy audience. So if you're not writing for someone and you're just writing for yourself, then maybe you shouldn't publish it. The other thing is tell more stories. That's what I usually write when I sign books. So even though it's a business book, you want to have those narratives in there that are because that's what people are going to remember, and that's going to help them connect the dots between what you're trying to tell them and the insights you're trying to share.
Geoffrey, where can people find you and follow your work?
The book, I have a URL called thecontentbeast.co. My joke about why it's not .com is because the Content Beast ate the M, even though that's not the real story. And then I'm GG Klein on most platforms, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn, or my speaker site is ggklein.com.
Fantastic. And Brendan, where can people find you and follow your work?
I'm on LinkedIn and Brendan McAdams, and then my email is brendan@kinetics.com, KIINETICS, and I'm occasionally on Twitter, which I refuse to change, calling it anything else.
And Sarah, how can people find you and follow your work?
People can find me at sarahmoody.com and on all social media platforms at Sarah L. Moody.
Fantastic. We'll put all these links in the show notes at bizbookpublishinghub.com, where you'll also find more than 50 experts ready to help entrepreneurs become successful authors. You'll find an invitation to join a free virtual networking event for writers and authors and these amazing show notes. Please join us there, bizbookpublishinghub.com. And thank you, panelists. So appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Robbie.